can argue, though, Luke, that the Democrats, I mean, remember that all of this started with, this is Hillary Clinton, and that's kind of the genesis of this whole story going back a decade now, almost a decade. At the same time, she lost that election, to be clear. Donald Trump won a second election. He is back in office. The economy is firing all cylinders. The market is hitting records. Inflation is tame. Look, Donald Trump has been in office for 6 months. He's had win after win after win. So maybe celebrating the wins isn't a bad choice right now for this president or for this administration.
I mean, this happened almost in the 1820s. It blows my mind how many parallels there are to Andrew Jackson and Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the modern day Andrew Jackson between tariffs, between going after central bankers. Andrew Jackson was trying to do away with the second bank of the United States. You have also the political elites going after them. Andrew Jackson was the first common man elected. Trump is the modern day non-politician. You have the 1824 bargain, the backdoor bargain that Henry Clay made against Andrew Jackson, trying to get John Quincy Adams in office. So this collusion is essentially that exact backdoor bargain type mentality with political elites going after. But what's interesting is both instances you have basically decades of the America going down the path of socialism, trying to get shot down. So both times right now, these are instances where socialism is getting shot down, and the political elites don't like that because government control is socialism.
Well, I mean, you got to, again, to be clear, and I think Liz kind of mentioned this as well, the political elites have been really shown the door. We're going to talk about it during the show this morning. But now, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, their leadership is in question. Their political positions are in question because the Democrats have been such disarray. So obviously things are changing, and it's not been news. And polls show that Americans are very disappointed in the Democrats, and they're very happy with the first 6 months of the Trump presidency. Majority Leader John Thune warning Maria on Sunday Morning Futures Congress may face a partial government shutdown this fall if Democrats cannot get it together enough to pass appropriations bills. Joining us now here in New York, Pennsylvania, Congressman Dan Muser. He is a member of the House Financial Services and Small Business Committees. Congressman, good morning to you. Your reaction to what Senator Thune told Maria?
Well, unfortunately, I think he's correct. The Democrats are sort of flailing away, trying to get attention. And if shutting down our government is what gives them their attention, I don't think that's beyond what Schumer and the rest of the Democrats would do. They have been defending the swamp, if you will, to no end. So we're passing budget bills now, appropriations bills. We've almost have all of them done in the House through the Appropriations Committee. I'm not sure exactly where the Senate is, but they must be close. So it will have some fiscal common sense and responsibility to it. They're going to probably want to see a budget with NPR and PBS and a rescission on the rescission. Or they'll threaten and fearmonger to shut down the government.
But I'm not sure that Senator Schumer has that much power anymore within his own party. It seems that there's a lot of voices that are turning against him now.
Well, yeah, but remember why they turned against him, because he did cooperate and he didn't shut down the government last time around. And that's where the crazy left, which is sort of the leadership at this point. And you know what? As Republicans, we want to have fiscal responsibility and all, but the last thing we were going to do is allow a government shutdown. And so it's just the height of irresponsibility that's taken place there if it continues to proceed.
And they may pay for it in the midterms next year really quick. But I want to get to this with you, because President Trump signed the Genius Act into law on Friday. This is the first major congressional overhaul of cryptocurrency rules. Congressman, the president naming you specifically for helping get the bill to the finish line. Let's watch.
This is really a big day. This afternoon, we take a giant step to cement the American dominance of global finance and crypto technology as we sign the landmark Genius Act into law. So congratulations to everybody. Dan Muser, I thought he was going to become the next governor of Pennsylvania, but he likes Congress better, I guess, huh? So, but I think you're terrific, and, I would have always been behind you. That I can tell you.
Governor, Congressman Muser, I don't know. But anyway, big shout out from President Trump on Friday.
Yeah, well, the president's very generous and very, very kind. And by the way, we named the bill after him, right? The Genius Act. No.
That was one of the best parts about the whole thing, seriously.
Yeah. Very, very important legislation. We did have bipartisan support. Initially, the Democrats were against it because anything they can't control, they don't like. That's why they continue to push for the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, which we are adamantly against. So the American people need to know that. And Fed Chairman Powell also said you would need congressional legislation in order to pass that. But this is so very important. It has set up a whole regulatory system for stable coins, so stable coins can be treated properly as assets by banks. So now they could use them for payment methods, they can invest in it, and they're backed by the dollar, which is very, very important for the whole world to invest in our stable coins in the U.S., and it helps our treasuries. It's backed by the treasuries as well. So it'll increase demand for treasuries, which in theory and I think in reality lowers interest rates.
Yeah.
Well, the state regulators, when I opened up the business, they were really hammering me about, are you going to own Bitcoin for clients? Insurance companies were asking me the second question about Bitcoin, and they were going to raise my insurance premiums if I was going to have Bitcoin in clients' portfolios. So the perception is Bitcoin's a scary, crazy, ridiculous thing. It's really risky when a lot of other things, in my opinion, are riskier because Bitcoin's really a hedge against the system. How do you kind of get that across to the average person that watching? I have more 75-year-old clients asking me about Bitcoin than I ever have.
It'll happen, right? As the banks begin accepting it, we just mentioned B of A was paused, was hesitant, didn't include it. All of that's going to change now because it's backed by the dollar, because it's in law. So all that's very important. And next is the Clarity Act. That's what Chairman French Hill, that's largely his bill, that will allow all digital assets to have a regulatory framework. So it's very important for the securities industry, allowing to determine whether or not a particular digital asset is a commodity or a security. So real important stuff, and that'll happen probably in September.
Love it.
Yeah. Liz, go ahead.
So a question, where is the EU compared to the U.S. on this kind of regulation?
Well, the EU has a heavier regulatory system.
Right.
Ours was really a baby step, or an important step forward to provide a framework where there's more freedom, more entrepreneurial opportunities. It's not just held to just the big banks or the big tech companies. Even the other day, Circle came out and said, this is great because this allows entrepreneurs to issue these stable coins, and as well, the European model does have the central bank digital currency, which that's not the way U.S. does things.
Yeah.
Well, the way the Democrats want to do it, they all voted against that.
Right. Well, hopefully we never get there.
Yeah. Well, I want to move on to another issue that's very important to you as well, and that's immigration, because police are searching right now for the second suspect accused of shooting an off-duty Border Patrol officer. This is an attempted robbery. It was right here in New York City over the weekend. And we're neighbors, Pennsylvania, New York. But that officer was shot in the face during this ambush, expected to survive. One illegal immigrant under arrest. DHS says he illegally crossed the country 2023. Extensive rap sheet. Grand larceny, assault, armed robbery. And they say that ICE officers have seen, get this, an 830% increase in assaults this year.
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now about where we're at?
Really, really not well. The number one purpose of government is public safety. National security on the federal level, but public safety, and we're just abandoning it, right? I mean, here in New York, this guy's been, do you see his crimes? All kinds of assaults and kidnapping in Massachusetts, are accused of kidnapping. And here he is out on the streets, cashless bail, never even had to pay $1 to get out of jail. So he's loose on our streets, and he's here illegally. So they don't cooperate with ICE. And I want to tell you something. I'm looking at this whole ICE thing. I may issue a bill or a resolution calling for those members of Congress, or perhaps any elected official that engages in violent hate speak against federal agents, i.e. ICE agents, that they can be censured within the U.S. House. We can't. The statements and the hate that's coming out of them, the vitriolic encouragement to people to go after and harass and fight ICE.
And it leads to violence, as Cheryl said, 800% increase.
Well, come back and let us know when you get that introduced and everything. That's actually a great idea as well. And again, congratulations on that big win on Friday for you.
The New York Times calling this this investigation kind of reviewing the steakhouse by talking about the salad. I mean, they're talking about all the unimportant issues and not the big elephant in the room. So, you know what? If they are lost, they're staying lost as far as I can see.
This YouGov poll, look, I mean, basically the percentage of registered voters who view the party favorably hit some of its lowest levels since the beginning of Trump's first term for the Democrats. 20 points underwater as of late May. And to pick up on something Liz said, it was policy. I mean, look, the decline of Joe Biden in front of her eyes, that disastrous debate, that was a part of it.
Yeah.
And Kamala's issues with not being able to answer a question, the word salad. But it was the party. It was open border policies. It was all the DEI, all the woke agenda. Those were sleeper issues. And when you look at the Fox voter analysis, people said, I want a closed border. I want safety in my cities. I mean, they completely ignored how Americans were thinking and feeling.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth there. They just don't relate to the common person. From Ohio, where I grew up for 28 years, then moving down to Kentucky, the average person just does not think like the Democratic Party. And as Liz said, the elephant in the room was the open border.
Yeah.
It was immigration. I just talked to somebody that moved here to the U.S. from Germany 2 years ago. He said 4 years ago, Germany, you would never meet anybody on the conservative party, because it kind of was frowned upon for a long time to be even conservative in Germany, right? Now, he's in the majority because over there they're dealing with the same thing with immigration issues up to Germany. So it's an issue around the world, not just around here in the U.S.
Ireland, Sweden, Denmark. I mean, all these countries their residents are saying enough is enough. We saw that anger here in New York City, Liz, with all of the migrants and the shelters and the billions of dollars that it was costing. That changed the conversation just here. But on a national level, I think what's most interesting here is how the Democrats, even today, they don't seem to understand that by letting the progressive left hijack them, it's going to make things worse for the party.
Because that group in their party, which, by the way, is a minority of the Democrats, always has been, probably always will be, is on the extreme end of things like immigration. They really want open borders. They really want to defund ICE. To your point, Cheryl and Luke, they are not listening to American voters. And as long as that happens, guess what, folks? They're going to lose elections.
And it was just 10 years ago, Obama was all for closing up the border. So it wasn't that long ago.
Everybody was.
He was the deporter in chief, by the way, just to be clear. All right, let's.
We are a city of immigrants. We have entire sectors of our economy that are dependent on immigrant labor. We have to get the fire areas rebuilt. We're not going to get our city rebuilt without immigrant labor. And it's not just the deportation. It's the fear that sets in when raids occur, when people are snatched off the street. If you ask me, is there anything that they have done good in terms of immigration? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that the viewpoint has been punitive, has been let's make it as miserable as possible so that these people don't come.
Okay, Liz Peek.
Well, yes, we do want to make it difficult and maybe miserable so people don't come. Look, has nothing happened positive on immigration? Is she kidding? We have closed the border, something that Joe Biden said took an act of Congress, if not an act of God. I mean, come on, people, this is ridiculous. Americans don't want an open border. We no longer have an open border. Karen Bass is amongst every Democrat. She is typical of Democrats who completely conflate legal and illegal immigration. What is wrong with these people? We are for legal immigration. We know that we need immigrant labor for various tasks that Americans don't want to do or we don't have enough people to do. We have laws for that. Expand the number of visas if that's what we need to do. But don't tell me we need illegal immigrants to rebuild California, which burned down to the ground because of mismanagement by Karen Bass. That is my rant for the morning.
Well, no, you're fine. You're fine. Plenty to talk about with her. She is the gift that keeps on giving. But I want to stay with California. This is going to, Luke, I want you to respond to this. There is this controversial state Senate bill aimed at creating affordable housing in Pacific Palisades. It's been paused over community opposition and concerns about who is actually making these decisions. So homes in the area, okay, remember the fires, everybody, right? Homes in that area still that have not been repaired or rebuilt. Okay, to be clear, after those wildfires that happened earlier this year, the bill They're going to delay it now to 2026. Residents and local leaders, including LA Mayor Karen Bass, strongly oppose the plan. So here's what they wanted to do. It was basically a land grab.
Yeah.
And that is what has been the big fight happening after the wildfires in LA, because they're saying what the city's trying to do is buy up in the county, buy up a bunch of homes, buy up the land where the fires destroyed these homes. Then you take it, all of a sudden, boom, you create affordable housing.
Well, guess what's caused the issue of unaffordable housing throughout the years? It's government intervention of bailing things out, lowering, hiking interest rates, boom and bust cycles. That's what's caused this whole thing in the first place from a federal standpoint. All local governments do is make it worse because they come in, they create maybe rent, hikes that put the minimum in for rents, and then all that does is usually cause inflationary pressures of the houses, so it causes bigger issues down the road. So what is also very interesting from an immigration standpoint is we are down to 6,100 crossing the border in June, and also that's 93% down from year over year from last year. What's interesting from that standpoint, from an affordable housing, how that relates is the illegal immigration is deflationary. If you deport people, and if you actually have net negative immigration, which could happen in 2025 for the first time since the 1960s, you have less workers in the economy, and you have less people filling housing, all that stuff. That means interest rates are actually going to go on lower. That's another bull thesis for lower interest rates, which could actually help make the housing more affordable.
Oh, that's an interesting point, Liz.
Yeah, it's a lot to digest. Is it true that when Obama deported 3 million people, that was still net positive migration? I'm surprised at that. I mean,
it wasn't.
I'm just curious.
From my data points, 1960s. It's very interesting.
California is a mess. And every time I say that, I think, how can Gavin Newsom be Democrats' first choice to run for president in 28? When I say a mess, housing is unaffordable in California. That's just the way it is. And why? If you read some of the stories about the permit issues and so forth, it is impossible to build in California. And here we have an area that was totally destroyed. The local politicians are on the hook to get it rebuilt as quickly as possible. And what I keep reading is maybe 4 homes have been built, something like that. It is like impossible.
I was going to bring that up, actually, is that's the other issue. And remember when President Trump went out to California and he was sitting next to Karen Bass, and he flat out said, I mean, this is somebody that spent his life in real estate and construction. And he said, what are you talking about? You can get these, you can get these permissions done. You can get the permits done. You can make this happen quickly. Don't block the permitting process. I mean, in a nutshell, it's what he said to her. I don't have the soundbite because it was several months ago. But he's right.
They have.
And that's what they're doing. No,
It's extraordinary.
They're doing exactly what he said do not do. Get these people the help they need to rebuild their neighborhoods.
But she's going to say, well, it's
is.
because we didn't have enough illegal immigrants. So sorry, we don't have any homes for people.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
And now Newsom is tweeting that, oh, we're not bulldozing fire victims' neighborhoods. Really? Okay. All right. We're just getting started this hour. We've got a lot more coming up. Time now for the word on Wall Street. Top investors are watching your money. Joining me now, Bolvin Wealth Management Group President Gina Bolvin. Also with me is Luke Lloyd. All right, Gina, we're going to start with you. Futures are higher on this Monday morning. We're looking for a lot of big tech numbers coming out this week. Alphabet, Tesla going to report Wednesday. The S&P 500 still hovering near record highs. We've been lifted by AI momentum and, of course, strong corporate performance. Crypto stocks moving higher this morning. Take a look at, in particular, Coinbase, Amara Holdings, 2 of the biggest players there. Those stocks substantially higher this morning. President Trump signed the Genius Act into law on Friday, helping create the first major framework for regulating stablecoins. Gina, we had a great discussion with Congressman Muser in the last hour about this. He was part of the push to get this signed into law on Friday. Your reaction to what really is history that was made on Friday afternoon at the White House, because now you have a true regulatory framework for the industry. And the argument that this strengthens the dollars, it strengthens U.S. Treasuries.
Absolutely. Hi, good morning, Cheryl. Thank you for having me. And definitely puts a plus in the column for anybody who owns Bitcoin. But I do agree with your earlier guest that said, I think the AI tailwind is more important and more strong. And I'm really focused on this week, what we're seeing with earnings. It's a really big week for earnings. And in order for stocks to move higher in the short term, we're going to have to see some upside surprise, and I think we could get there.
You know, it's interesting, though, Luke, I want to talk about the street even last week. I mean, it was a huge week. S&P 500, NASDAQ, notching all-time highs. Dow barely ended up in the red. But overall, this momentum is pretty incredible, Luke, considering that we're now at that 6-month mark under President Trump. And all of the tariff worries that we had back in April have faded. And that market freakout has faded. And look where are today. It's pretty. Do you think that's a bullish sign for the second half of 2025?
It is. And the bullish sign last week was all around the banks. And specifically, if you look at the banks, it was actually the investment banking side of things. And you can talk with, whether it's oil, you can talk about AI, tech, you can talk about all these different things. Investment banking seems to be rocking and rolling. And the cool thing there is that it's rocking even at these higher interest rates. I mean, usually investment banking happens when rates are low and you can borrow money cheaply to scoop up smaller companies. But it seems like this economy is really resilient, and it looks like it's being spread out the breadth with the whole market.
Yeah, and I remember looking at some of the earnings last week that we got from some of the banks, and in particular, I believe it was either Bank of America or Wells Fargo talked about that, more deals are coming, that there was a little bit of a lull when it came to IPOs and M&A and things like that, but that really these are more just kind of technical delays, and that there's a lot of deals in the pipeline that during this quarter right now. Let's take a look at oil this morning. Traders are certainly assessing the impact of these new EU sanctions on Russian supply, while they're also worried about Middle East producers raising their output. That could pressure oil lower. Maria asked Chevron Chairman and CEO Mike Wirth if softening oil prices are prompting any pullback in his business strategy. Watch this.
But, Mike, I mean, when you see oil prices decline and it's not as economically opportunistic for you, do you pull back? Do you not want to do the kind of activity that you would have done with oil prices at much higher levels?
We take a long-term view on prices, Maria, and the decisions we make, be it capital investment into our business or things like M&A, are not predicated on the price of the day or the movement we've seen over the last 6 months. They're really predicated on a long-term view of price through the cycles, and we look at the fundamentals that drive it: demand, supply, economic growth, population, technology, and we take a long-term view for those large decisions. And so whether prices come off or increase in the short term really has very little bearing on some of those bigger and longer term decisions that we have to face.
Yeah, very bullish comments there, Luke, from him.
Well, it's interesting that the oil markets are actually calling the bluffs from the EU right now, because if we would have saw oil rise, that would say that the supply constraint would have happened if we're in Russia. So it doesn't really seem like that they're banking on that actually going through, or many supply constraints over in Europe at least. But I think this is actually bullish for the U.S. energy, because as EU and Russia kind of fight back and forth about what's going on from a supply side, and then China's worried about the Middle East, maybe tensions rising with the Strait of Hormuz. Again, I don't know if that's going to happen again. I think this is actually advantageous for all of the U.S. oil, and especially with them so bullish about this M&A side with Hess. I think that tells you a lot. And then you have AI on top of that. There's so many tailwinds for energy. I think you should actually have a much heavier weighting of energy in your portfolio than the S&P 500 has a weighting.
Yeah, no, that Hess deal was historic. And again, another market positive. Gina Bolvin, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here, Gina.
Thank you.
All right. And Luke, you're going to stay with us all morning long. Widespread backlash from conservatives, including Republican Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, who told Fox News Digital he claims to be a socialist, whether it's wanting to abolish private property or wanting to seize the means of production. These are communist ideas right out of the playbook of Karl Marx. Liz Peek, a Mayor Mamdani in New York City. Many in this city are now rising up and saying it would destroy the city. Worse than Bill de Blasio.
Absolutely. I mean, President Trump has a wonderful way with nicknames, and it's a commie Mamdani, and I think everyone is sort of coming around and saying, yeah, he really is a communist. He's not a socialist. But here's what's happening. Why is he going to Uganda? My read is this. Everyone said this would happen, and it is happening. There is more and more stuff coming out about past comments, whether it's closing down prisons or redistributing wealth, or, yes, putting people you don't know in your own home, getting rid of private property, taking over the means of production. People should know what that means is that the state organizes and runs businesses as opposed to private enterprise. So a lot's coming to the surface here, and it's denting his approval ratings and his polling. polling now shows that other people actually are in contention. This is not a runaway race. So I think he got out of town actually just to kind of let that all simmer down, and hopefully he comes back and he sort of reinvigorates his campaign and pushes back on some of this.
So,
but,
okay, so you're elected the mayor of New York City, but, oh, I'm going to take a vacation. You know what this reminded me of? Pete Buttigieg. Yeah. Right after he becomes transportation secretary, he disappears. There's a huge train derailment. Right. Oh, I was on paternity leave. Right. I mean, that's the thinking in this, generation, that, but I need my personal time and my space. I'm sorry, I digress.
Personal time. Yeah. I don't got that.
But one of the things about that video that I thought was interesting is that, and Lee Carter made this point with the panel and us on Thursday, and of course we got mad. We got mad thinking about this. But she said, but look at what he did. Yeah. Look at how we use social media to rally and to get all these register voters, in particular out in Brooklyn. And Eric Adams said the same thing. He got people to the polls to vote for him, and he used TikTok.
I don't think the common person off Main Street understands that these policies that he's talking about could come true. Because everyone's saying the private property things especially, we'll never get away with private property. We'll never not be able to own our own land and houses. But if you look back throughout history, 1930s, FDR making us sell gold to the government, eminent domain back in the 1950s, these all keep on stacking on top of each other. These things are possible. We can't allow this to happen.
Yeah, no. That is socialism.
That is right.
You want to go to Cuba and Venezuela? You want that to be New York City?
We're allowing it to happen.
That is socialism. All right, let's get a look at your...
Involved was John Brennan.
Totally involved. He was totally involved. John Brennan was one of the architects, in my opinion. You look at Brennan, you look at Clapper, you look at them all. But ultimately, the president knew everything. The president knew everything. President Obama and Vice President Biden, they knew everything.
And Comey and Brennan and Clapper, they all were terrible, and they lied to Congress. They spied on my campaign, which is treason. They spied both before and after I won.
So from Devin Nunes to John Ratcliffe to President Trump himself.
These have life-changing consequences. I mean, the biggest risk is not China. The biggest risk is not Russia. It's not our economy imploding. Our biggest risk is corruption from the inside, making all those issues come true, right? Mm-hmm. So, look, I mean, again, the biggest thing I can relate to here is the the corrupt bargain of 1824 with Andrew Jackson, when John Quincy Adams made the presidency because of a backroom deal with Henry Clay. Very similar things from a political election side of things. But again, in the 1700s, people didn't think we'd have income taxes. In the 1700s, people didn't think we'd have property taxes. They would laugh in your face. Now we don't own our land because we have to pay property taxes. These things keep on stacking on top of each other if the wrong people get elected for reasons that the American people don't want. This corruption makes the system implode.
I think it's clear that the Obama-Clinton legacy is done. It is in the past.
Hope so.
Yeah. We are just getting started. Futures are higher this morning. Dow is up 97, NASDAQ is up 50, S&P is up 13 and change. Traders are waiting a lot of big tech earnings coming out this week. Alphabet and Tesla coming out Wednesday. Now, the S&P 500 remains near record highs, lifted by AI momentum and strong corporate performance. I want to bring in Slate Stonewall partner and chief market strategist Kenny Polcari. Kenny, what are you expecting, but in particular when it comes to technology? So far, the big bank numbers have been very strong. Looks like M&A and IPOs are back in the pipeline for the banking sector. What do you expect for technology?
I suspect that we're going to get good numbers out of tech. You already started seeing it in Taiwan Semi last week when they reported bullish numbers, although you had a disappointment with ASML, but that doesn't concern me so much because I think Taiwan Semi is kind of setting the tone. So I think we're going to get great numbers out of, the big tech names that we're looking for, right? Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, any of those, NVIDIA, all those tech names, I'm looking for them to perform very well, which doesn't mean that they're going to continue to go higher. Look, we saw the banks report okay, and the reaction was muted because, my sense is that they, at the moment, were priced to perfection. I think the same could happen in tech. We could see the numbers be strong, but we could also, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw tech take a step back because they've rallied strongly off of that April pullback.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at where the markets are in the first 6 months under the Trump administration and Donald Trump, and you look at where we are versus where we were in April, when the markets were so worried about the tariff threats and there was all these calls of a recession. Every major economist has now pulled back their predictions of a recession for the United States of America. Consumer sentiment is improving. Inflation is tame. New record highs for the markets. So you have to point out how strong the markets have been this year, and that's such a great thing. And let's pull up yields because I want to look at the 10-year and the 2-year. So the president is pushing for higher tariffs on the EU with less than 2 weeks until that August 1st trade deadline. And EU envoys, are going to be talking this week. They're preparing a potential retaliation plan for a no-deal scenario with the president. Commerce Secretary Lutnick, he says he's confident that we're going to get these trade deals, in particular with the EU. But he was very firm, saying August 1st is the deadline. Also said the next 2 weeks are shaping up to be ones for the record books as the president is looking for these new tariff deals with more countries. So, Kenny, that was the Secretary of Commerce yesterday on one of the Sunday shows. Do you think the markets are as tuned in and nervous about these trade deals as they were back in April?
I don't think that they're worried about those trade deals. Look, here's what's going to happen. If August 1st comes and we don't have a lot of these deals, or there's retaliatory tariffs by the EU because we haven't made a deal yet, then I think the market will once again get nervous. And well, I don't think it's going to get nervous like it did in April, but I do think that headline will give investors and algos and traders a reason to pause. Look, Cheryl, you and I both know we're kissing new highs at 6,300 in the S&P. The RSI is just kissing that overbought line. So, which means as long as the data and the headlines are positive, we can keep moving higher. You get one negative headline and the tariffs would be it, or the EU retaliatory tariffs would be it, and you could see the market just kind of take a breather and pull back, which, by the way, I think might be healthy for the market, right? That it should pull back. But I think that while I think that the markets are concerned, they're not as concerned as they were at all in April.
Absolutely. Look, Lloyd, jump in here.
Kenny, hello, my friend. So if we look back to, like you said, April, we did see the 20% decline very quickly because of the tariff news. As you mentioned, you don't expect that to necessarily be as big of a decline if we get negative news after August 1st. But August 1st is that deadline, right? So what happens if we get past that August 1st deadline and it keeps on getting extended, and then it actually does start impacting the economy in some ways? We have not seen that impact inflation, which I am not surprised about. I'm actually in the camp tariffs in the long term are more disinflationary. What is your thought on that?
So I don't think tariffs, and we've seen it, Luke, I don't think we've seen tariffs create this inflation drama that everyone was screaming about back, in late March, early April. And I agree with you, nor do I think it is going to. But if we keep kicking that tariff can down the road, then I think markets are going to start to get a little bit concerned that they're not coming together, that they're not gelling. And don't forget, August tends to be, as we move into September, that tends to be kind of an iffy time in the market where markets tend to pull back a little bit. We run into a little bit of turmoil. And I think the same thing is going to happen this year, especially if we don't get, progress on those tariffs. If they keep getting kicked down the road, then I think there's that chance that we'll see the markets pull back.
Liz Peek.
Kenny, hi. The EU has a $200 billion trade surplus with the U.S. I'm a little surprised that Germany came out today, I think, saying that they, like France, are ready for retaliatory actions. That seems pretty aggressive for a group that basically has not allowed our cars to be sold in their countries, not allowed agricultural products to be sold. Do you think it's just posturing? And what do you think those retaliatory moves might look like if, in fact, they move forward on that?
I think it is posturing. I think it's just the EU standing up and trying to position themselves for an extension or for more negotiations before before August 1st. So I don't suspect that they're going to impose retaliatory tariffs, but I do think it's absolutely a negotiating tool, and it's a way for them to try to keep the pressure on Lutnick or Trump or Bessent, who's ever doing all the negotiations, to really come to the table to try to get this deal done. I'm not in the camp that it's going to happen. I just think to your point, I think it's part of the tactic.
All right. Well, August 1st, right around the corner. Kenny Polcari, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's good to see you.
And you as well, Cheryl. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. We'll be right back, everybody. Begin to react and kick off Young Conservative Week here on Mornings with Maria. Former GOP national spokesperson and former Trump campaign staffer, Elizabeth Pipko. Elizabeth, your reaction to this shift that we're seeing to socialism in this country?
Yeah, good morning, Cheryl. Thanks for having me. I don't know if it's really a shift. I think the problem is that the Democrat Party has put in no effort in recent years to kind of stand against their, far left faction of their base that stands for socialism. So the problem is when they're going up against Donald Trump, someone who's not only so popular on the right, but who even people like Bill Maher call one of the most effective presidents we've ever had, they end up looking really poor if they try to stand against one of their most popular candidates who ends up looking like the only person who's tried to bring any kind of solutions to the people of this country. So the problem is now they have a decision to make, and it's, do we stand against socialism? Do we stand against everything that Mamdani has brought to the table, or do we allow this Democrat to prosper because he's the first one in such a long time who's able to rally any kind of support? So they're in a very, very difficult spot. But the fact is, if they had stood against socialism years ago when it started festering in their party, we wouldn't be here right now.
But what does your generation say about this? I mean, I ask because what we saw happen in New York City, and this has a lot of these Democrats in Washington, and that's why they wanted to have breakfast with him last week, because he used TikTok, he used Instagram, it was social media. He went out to Brooklyn, and he got these voters, these 25, 28-year-old voters, not just to register to vote, to become voters, excuse me, but to rally behind him, to walk the streets for him, to cheer. He's become a meme on TikTok. And I think that's where that's where I'm curious about that younger generation. Is that how they respond? Is that how you get that person to the polls, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat?
Well, I think it's a combination of things, right? So first of all, yes, he's incredibly popular on social media. So obviously is Donald Trump on the right. But the thing is, he's also bringing forward solutions that resonate with young people who aren't taking the time to do their research to realize that the solutions do not work, right? A lot of the things that he has proposed, he's not going to be able to do as the mayor of New York City, and will actually ruin the city and the country as we know it. So I think the combination of social media and bringing forward these popular solutions that might not even work when you're up against no one, when you're up against Andrew Cuomo, who kind of sat back during the primary thinking he was going to win, and a Democrat establishment that is scared to propose actual solutions because they know the only thing that works is these pro-socialist views, you're left with a very difficult spot trying to bring young people over to your side.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if this younger generation understands that a lot of the things that he's proposed, he cannot do. He legally cannot do, but that's for another discussion, I guess. I want to ask you about this. A new CNN poll reveals the Democrats' favorability rating lowest in decades, 28%. So how are young voters reacting, do you think, to this? Do they have this negative view of the Democratic Party in general?
They definitely do. Look, we're talking about TikTok. This is another reason Mamdani is popular. He's going against the Democrat establishment. That's who's unpopular with young people and with this party base. The fact is they've waited for solutions for 10 years, and all they've gotten is more criticism of Donald Trump, which may be fun for a couple of years, but it doesn't win elections, and it doesn't make the lives of the American people better. They need someone that actually comes to the table and brings some kind of solutions and answers to their problems forward. We've seen how successful Donald Trump has been on the right in being an effective politician, someone who's able to do that. They don't have that on the left. That's why socialism is so popular. It's the only solution any Democrat has brought forward since 2016.
And that is why the Democrats consistently have been called out of touch, because they have lost touch with what the average person wants. And that is what Donald Trump did in 2024 and in his first term as well. He listened to what people wanted, how they felt, and he responded. And look at what happened with immigration. Now you have a closed border. So speaking of the Trump administration, they actually celebrated President Trump's first 6 months back in office. President Trump saying that the United States has been totally revived after being dead under former President Joe Biden. So talk to me about your impressions of the first 6 months of Donald Trump's presidency.
Yeah, look, I think totally revived is a great way to put it. We feel like we're on the world stage again. We feel like we have a leader who stands up for us again. We feel like our adversaries might fear us once again, something we hadn't seen for so many years. The fact is Donald Trump brings a kind of energy and a kind of confidence to the people of this country that we actually forgot we could feel when we had to suffer under Joe Biden for 4 years. It's an amazing time to be an American. And the fact is this is why people are struggling so hard to go against him. He brings this kind of faith in our country proving once more that so many are lacking on the Democrat side. And I think it's very hard to try to put someone up for 2028 who has to go against the record that Donald Trump has, not only as a politician and effective leader, but as a person who's been around for 10 years in politics, gone up against every single obstacle that's come on his way, and come out even more popular on the other side.
I've got Luke Lloyd on set. He's got a question for you.
Hey, Elizabeth, I think we're part of the same generation. I think the average person's always searching for purpose. Purpose is the most important thing. And these social media echo chambers basically create a sense of fake purpose for a lot of people to join a kind of movement to make them feel included in some sort of ways. Back in the day, it used to be have kids, get married, whatever it be. Like, those provided some sense of purpose. Patriotic values, bootstrapping things by yourself provided purpose. What advice would you give to young people for them to create purpose in today's crazy social media tech world?
It's a really, really good question. Look, I'll bring it back to Donald Trump because he's our leader right now. In 2016, he got me out of my seat, out of my bed, my depressive episode I was in as a teenage girl, got me volunteering on his campaign, then working for his campaign and falling in love again, not only with my country, but with myself again, because I watched what he went up against. I watched the world laugh at him when he was polling at 1%, and then I watched him become president. And I realized if you believe in yourself, if you believe in this country, you can actually accomplish absolutely anything. That's why Donald Trump is so popular. He's not a Republican. He's just common sense. He's a man that brings inspiration, whether you agree with all of his policies or not. So if you're looking for some kind of purpose, realize the entire world can go up against you and you can still become president twice, because in America, you can do absolutely anything that you want to do.
Love it.
Elizabeth Pipko, it's great speaking with you this morning. Thank you for being here. It's fascinating to talk to your generation. Really. All right, time for some final thoughts. Liz Peek.
Number one, I think it's just horrifying that we now have proof positive, according to Tulsi Gabbard, that President Obama and Clapper and Brennan, his national security apparatus, conspired to undermine Donald Trump. I think we all knew that was true. Donald Trump has talked about that for years. It's a horrifying, treasonous thing that went on. I hope that these guys get slammed in some way. I don't know. Going forward this week, all about trade deals. The EU is really incredibly contentious right now, surprisingly so, I think, considering that they've blocked us out of markets for years. I hope we get a deal done with them pretty soon, because Germany's getting feisty. Macron in France wants to be feisty. Come on, guys, let's get a deal done. We want to get this finished.
It's over $900 billion that we're talking about last year that was traded with the EU and the United States. And they are, to her point, the biggest partner that we have under that. Canada and Mexico, which you've also got.
It feels like a lot of countries are playing a lot nicer, right? And we did see the dollar, even though we saw a quick rally over the weekend with the dollar index up a little bit, we have been progressively getting lower on the dollar index. So I am looking international. I think like South Korea, as we unplug out of China, South Africa, India, Mexico, Argentina. I think that it's a heavier weight in your portfolio internationally than it's been probably in 20 years. I think I'd look into that. Even the boring sectors, like XLU's up 4% over the past 6 months, the same as the S&P, with the call over AI, maybe lower interest rates. I think a stock market, generally speaking, the pathway's higher. I think Netflix told you a little bit about tech stocks, even though tech earnings, I think, are going to come in really good. You saw the sell-off in Netflix about 4% after their earnings report, just because it rallies so hard. So I'd look underneath the hood, equal weight index, RSP, something like that, to look underneath the hood for those earnings reports.
Yeah, well, certainly, I mean, again, as we look at the first 6 months of the Trump administration, it is amazing. You've got new records for the S&P and the NASDAQ. Yep. You've got these trade deals that are in process. Secretary Ludnick saying yesterday morning that August 1st is the hard deadline. But he also made, I thought, a really interesting comment. He goes, look, if countries still want to talk to us, we will talk to you. Right. And it continues. All right, Liz Peek, Luke Lloyd, thank you so much. Varney & Company is